At the time, 10 British companies got together to talk about the threat of the First World War. If people remember 10% of what you said, you were very lucky.
What comes first, milk or tea? The British Chamber of Commerce was established in 1915. How was it evolved through all this time?
Absolutely. In 1915, at the time, 10 British companies got together to talk about the threat of the First World War, the threat of trade, how they could protect the business community and how they could lobby as a group. And quickly, that 10 became 60 companies within a year. And today, 110 years later, we're over 275 company members, and we've been growing double-digit growth over the last 2 years. So I think as important as it was then, it's as important now to bring the community together so people can share, find opportunities, deal with issues, but communicate as a group to lobby for the interests of business between our two countries.
Let's talk about trade between China and the UK. Based on my research, it seems that in 2024, key sectors are cars, crude oil, and pharmaceutical products. Is it true, or is there any other sectors which play a significant role?
Sure. We're in a very positive environment. I think many companies have been here for tens, if not 50, 100 years. They know how to operate in China. China is the second largest economy in the world and continues to grow. We also see new investment coming into China. A company called INEOS in the petrochemical environment invested over £800 million into China last year, into their new headquarters near Ningbo. Obviously cars, automotive. You have Jaguar Land Rover, you have Aston Martin, you have Rolls-Royce, you have Bentley, you have Lotus, you have those premium cars from the UK, which are some of our biggest exports to China and are always popular. You're also seeing Chinese investment into these companies as well. So Geely now owns Lotus and produces some cars in the UK, but is also building huge R&D and production facilities in China. But you also have smaller companies. You have a company called Morgan, which is one of the UK's oldest car companies, very luxury, old style sports cars. They only make 5,000 cars a year. And from this year, they will be importing for the first time into China. So I think the appetite for these luxury products is increasing, which blends into a lot of what the UK does. Pharmaceutical, as you mentioned, a huge factor. GSK, AstraZeneca, world-leading brands continuing to invest in China. GlaxoSmithKline opened their R&D facilities in Lingang last year, and they see this is part of China's medical growth as well, I believe.
There is another interesting number. While UK exports of goods in 2024 was flow up and down, but exports of services have increased by 6.3%. And how do you think, what potential of the British services sector in the Chinese market?
Services is a strength of the UK economy and also an area of focus for the Chinese central government to expand the Chinese economy and its service sector as well. Strengths of finance of one. I mean, finance, the UK service financial sector services most of the world. We know that. We just had the economic financial dialogue with our Chancellor of the Exchequer, and Deputy Prime Minister Rachel Reeves visited here in January, and they had very engaging conversations and passed 69 different policies to help engage and encourage more trade, many of those in the financial sector. Education is the other key area for services. Not only the high schools and the universities as we see, but professional education. And this was also part of the economic dialogue. Recognition of more qualifications in finance, in architecture, in design, to match those in accountancy, in legal and other areas right now.
One thing that stands out about British business is creativity, right? And I think it's what companies worldwide are looking for in British markets. Is it true?
I think we have that title and we have that, the view of the world is the creative heart of the UK. And I think it's something we're very proud of. And it crosses industry. I think education is obviously an obvious example of where companies from around the world use the UK for their research and design, for their global headquarters to be there because of the quality of talent they can recruit. And that's not just British talent. The UK is a hub for the best international talents to travel to and to study there. And that creates an advantage for companies in the UK to utilize the structure of UK education to get the best out of international talents, to then hire those people, to then create the best companies in the world and lead with them. I think a great example of where China and the UK companies are working together on this right now is from a design and urban planning perspective.
But British education is not so cheap. Not everyone can afford.
Well, nothing of high value is cheap.
To be accepted in the British society, is it important to have proper education?
I don't think so. I think that many successful people here don't necessarily have high-level degrees. You don't have to have that to succeed in the UK. And I think you've got academic education, but you have cultural intelligence and you have emotional intelligence as well. I think those two things together are all extremely important, and individually have their own levels of importance as well. And that's where that multicultural environment can help teach you that cultural intelligence, maybe that emotional intelligence as well. Pure academia can be great in certain scientific engineering situations, but dealing with people, you need to have other levels and abilities to communicate and connect, and to learn how to flex and to be open to other ideas, to then accept things that maybe you don't understand, to find solutions that work cross-culturally.
But do I understand right that successful business sometimes it's also not only about leadership and right strategies, but also about the way how you communicate. So communication skills are one of the most important, right? Do you agree?
Communication is the most important skill in life, I think. Something I remind my team and remind myself is that when you're talking with somebody, when you're in a meeting, if people remember 10% of what you said, you were very lucky. People naturally spend most of the time thinking about themselves and their own thoughts. Or when you're talking about communication, what you say will be interpreted differently by everybody. They will be thinking about how it impacts them, how it impacts their life, maybe not the point that you meant to make. So it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And it's why it's important, not just to you, just to the person you're speaking to. You need to connect with everybody and understand their motivations to then tailor that message to get the best out of them, to help them understand why it's beneficial for them to engage within the conversation with the outcome you want or the strategy you have. I think that's the most important thing. And it's not just about what should be happening. You have to look around at the reality.
I've heard that the status, like the mark of status in the UK is the way how a person speaks. Is it true? Like accent shows the class in the UK. You can always identify a person, and if a person goes to the boarding school, this person has a proper accent. If no boarding school, different accent. And this is kind of a mark in the society. Is it true?
I think that's a perception, and it definitely was true at the time. I think hopefully the UK is trying to dispel that as well. We're trying to make sure all of the UK is recognised, and Scotland and Wales are countries, and Northern Ireland are countries as part of the UK. It's not just England.
So now accent is not a problem in the UK.
It is always important to understand what somebody says, which can be difficult with certain accents, especially when they're talking to somebody from another country who is trying to understand a new language and then try to understand your accent as well can cause difficulties, of course. I'm as in any country, as in China, you have different accents here. You can very clearly hear a Beijing or a North accent. Around the R's, it doesn't mean that their educational levels are any different. But it does work well in movies and televisions to have that very iconic, aspirational British accent, the Queen's English.
And let's talk about Brexit. What do you think of it?
There's obviously been disruption between straight UK-EU trading, and it's impacted a lot of companies and a lot of jobs. At the same time, we now have a UK which has a stable centralist majority government. It is not tied to EU regulations anymore, so it is free to make economic and political decisions on its own. I think that's a great opportunity. And at the time where there are rising tensions between China and the EU and between America and the EU, the UK has its opportunity to be an island of sense, an island of investment, an island of collaboration, which it has a long history of being, and it has great relationships with China over many hundreds of years in trade and investment.
Has Brexit caused significant challenges for British business, for example, here in China?
So I've been here in China throughout that whole period. But when Brexit started, I started a new job with the British government when they created the Department of International Trade. And I was there leading the trade and investment for the agricultural, food and drink industry. And because of the shift in trade and the opportunities that maybe used to be there with the EU, we had a much larger focus on international markets. And China was and still is one of those. In the last 10 years, China has moved from a top 10 partner for agriculture, food and drink with the UK to a top 4 partner with China for UK agriculture, food and drink. And that's both way trade. But UK selling its products to China, especially dairy, pork, other food and drink goods, is a great opportunity not just for British companies selling to China, but also for the taste palette of the Chinese to see and taste and experience new things. Welcome to our Harrods afternoon tea.
And it's very British, right?
Very British.
A common question.
Please.
What comes first? Milk or tea?
Well, I can give you my answer. If I know how strong the tea is going to be, then I would put the milk in first. If I'm not sure how strong the tea is going to be, I will put the milk in second because I don't want too much milk in my tea. I want the right strength of tea compared to milk to have that balance of acidity and cream. So I think it's important you don't want watery tea, that's the worst thing in the world. So if you're out in a hotel or a restaurant, definitely in China, where British tea and Chinese tea are quite different, I think I would always put the tea in first. But traditionally in the UK, you'd put the milk in first.
And how do you drink tea at home?
I drink it, I have a big mug, which takes about a litre of water. So I use 2 tea bags, a big mug of tea, because I'm quite lazy. So I like to sit there with lots of tea. With milk, absolutely.
And what kind of tea? Earl Grey or English breakfast?
Both wonderful, and there's lots of other wonderful varieties of tea. For everyday tea at home, and we have it in our office, is Yorkshire tea. It's now the number 1 tea in the UK, but it's a very high quality black everyday tea, which gives you a very good cup. Enjoying tea. Earl Grey is fantastic, maybe more in the afternoon. Maybe more with afternoon tea, where you have a lot of creaminess already, and you may want to use some lemon with your Earl Grey rather than milk to keep that freshness and that acidity to it. And there's plenty of times I like to enjoy Chinese tea as well, and lots of different flavors and styles of that. When you have, in our case, British and Chinese people, businessmen and companies doing business together, we need to get to know each other. We need to understand not just the laws of the land, but the cultural norms. We need to understand how to communicate. We may have different meanings for the same words. In Asia, it's quite common to say yes to everything and then maybe negotiate on it. Whereas in the West, it's quite common to say no to something and then find a way to do it. You can get to the same way in the end, but you have to understand that a yes doesn't mean the deal is done here, but also a no doesn't mean the deal isn't done in the West. But those two very simple meanings of the word yes and no, and the different interpretation of it, could stop what could be a great deal happening. And you both want to get to the same place, you just have a different understanding of how to get there. So small understandings of those little cultural things can come out maybe when you have a little more of a cultural time, when you spend time to get to know each other.
You are Executive Director of British Chamber of Commerce. How does your role help British companies to operate in Chinese market?
The way we help British companies is three. One is advocacy. We work closely with the British government and the Chinese government, mainly on provincial levels, to help them engage with companies in conversations. What to help the British companies tell the British government what they need. The governments respect our position and our ability to bring companies together to advise them from a neutral basis. We do the same for the Chinese provinces as well. We worked with Invest Shanghai and SCOFCOM last year to do an event around SEMs and how SEMs can foster better in Shanghai. It was a big focus for Shanghai to have more SEM businesses here. So we connect them with our businesses to ask questions, to get answers, and to create new solutions. In my role, my job is to listen to everybody and then help make the right decisions for our membership. So our 275 companies, we have to listen to those. We have to listen to our government stakeholders, Chinese side and UK side. We have to listen to the alumni and those in that community. And then as a team, try and make decisions on how we can help that environment overall.
Business is a very competitive area, right? But how do you think it's better to compete with each other or collaborate?
It depends on the business. I think what we try and do as a chamber is we talked about automotive industry before. Maybe normally Aston Martin and Jaguar Land Rover wouldn't talk. But under the British Chamber of Commerce, we bring the industry together to find common problems, to share common solutions. There's certain areas of business where you can work together. And then there's your marketing and individual bits to sell your cars. That's different. But industries as a whole face regulatory, environmental issues that collaborating will help brand Britain go further. So we try and bring companies together under the brand Britain logo. So as a country, we are smarter. As a country, we can compete better. And then they're set up stronger and better to go and do the B2C sales aspect of it.
Another common debate about scones. What comes first, cream or jam?
That is a debate, and it's actually still a fiercely fought debate in the UK. And it's, before you even get to the jam or cream, which we'll go into, it's how do you open a scone or a scone, depending how you want to say it. You will often see somebody take a knife and cutting the scone. That wouldn't be how technically you should approach it. Most scones, if they're cooked well, and you will see here where it's got a natural opening on it. Most scones you would just press gently around the outside, and that should naturally create your separation to break your scone apart. So if that doesn't happen, that means probably the scone is too dry. Maybe it's been overcooked, maybe it's been left out in the air, or maybe it just wasn't the best quality scone. But any good quality scone, you shouldn't need to use a knife. You shouldn't use a knife. You should gently pressure and slightly tear it apart without too much force, and then it gives you two very nice halves of a scone. Please.
But what's coming first? Cream
Well,
or jam?
and see, when I worked in the British government, there was debate of whether we can have this conversation because it was so fiercely fought. You have the Cornwall style and you have the Devon style. Both claim that the clotted cream, which is a very special cream, traditional with the scone, is from their region. And one side says you put the cream on first, followed by the jam, and the other side says you put the jam on first, followed by the cream. You've had British tea before. How did you make your scone? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. It was cream first and then jam.
So I would do it that way as well. For me, cream is more like a butter. You put your butter on a bread before you put your jam on a bread. Also, I think you can get more cream on it if you put the cream on first, and the cream's the best part. So personally, I would go cream first and then jam. Again, it doesn't matter, as long as you enjoy it. And if you have your heritage behind it, it's nice to have a story either way.
What quality do you appreciate the most in your employee?
We want to create an environment where they work independently. If you need support, if you need tools, obviously we review things regularly. The door is always open if you want to talk or discuss about something. Cross-work throughout the team to make sure you have joint solutions, but do that independently. Go away and create your own projects and lead your own projects, and have the confidence to talk to the team, have the confidence to work together to achieve something. Micromanagement doesn't help anybody. What does the chamber do? What is the best outcome of this world is people-to-people communications. The more we share, the more we have in common, the more we realize that people are very much the same around the world, and that is the safest this world is going to be if more people can have more international experiences, and those people in decision-making spots actually understand the impacts of their actions on the rest of the world.